Let us start with a bit of history. In the book Due in una carne, the relationship between sexuality and the Roman Catholic Church is examined. This will be my source. Despite polygamy being legal during the Roman Empire, women were severely punished for adultery if they were married to one man. Men, on the other hand, were venerated for their promiscuity. You can see this in Roman mythology, where Jupiter turns into all sorts of animals to seduce unsuspecting, beautiful, virgin women. A few centuries later, the church started to demonize sexuality and venerate virginity. While it may seem counterintuitive, monogamous marriages under the church were steps towards gender equality. Firstly, by the theology. According to the first book of the Corinthians, both men and women were deemed equal under marriage. Secondly, women were able to explore their sexuality without repercussions, as their husband had to support them. Women could not legally own property at this time, so if they had children out of marriage, they would not be able to support themselves. So either they married or they entered a monastery. The more people married under the church, the more influential it became. Thus, this was not to protect women, but rather just for political power. After the introduction of the birth control pill in the 1960s, everything changed. Women did not have to rely on men or the church to survive. They could control their own bodies, plan for careers and education without worrying about unplanned pregnancies. This little pill single-handedly brought about an economic and cultural revolution. Before the 1970s, MBAs and law degrees were over 95% male. Then, in the 1980s, women started to make up to a third of university classes. Marriage rates declined by 11%, and women progressively started earning more. But obviously, the pill doesn't benefit all women equally, especially in the US, where uninsured women can pay up to $1,210 a year for regular use, while those with insurance pay anywhere from $20 to $800. So women with incomes lower than $75,000 are more likely to cut corners, skip months, and not take the pill regularly, in contrast to well-off women who can afford to take their medication regularly. Poor women, therefore, are more likely to be financially crippled by unplanned pregnancies. Poverty, therefore, becomes a pernicious cycle. Government programs also benefit from birth control. In North Carolina, it was found that making Norplant, an oral contraceptive, more accessible to those with low incomes saved over $250,000 in aid to dependent children grants. So they made legislations encouraging the use of Norplant to combat poverty. This is essentially economic eugenics, or in simple terms, it implies the poor cannot have children in order to combat poverty. This excess push for oral contraceptives, in addition to pre-existing history of sterilization of poor African American women, planted even more distrust and skepticism around birth control. This animosity still affects this community today, which may explain why they take birth control less regularly compared to other ethnic groups. Employers also benefit from sponsoring contraception. Studies show that mothers are less desirable in the workplace, since companies would rather avoid paying maternity leave. In addition, it's ideal for employees to dedicate all their time and energy into their work. By having children, they are at risk of distraction and may become less productive. A capitalist society values productivity and economic growth. Although the contraceptive pill has torn down so many doors in terms of women's rights, it has also accentuated known notions of capitalism, such as the monetization of productivity and labor. The long-term societal effects of the pill also reveal that the value of a woman lies within her contribution to the workforce, which may be by participating directly or birthing future employees. The same can be said for ideas of economic eugenics. It sits upon the assumption that your value is ultimately determined by your bank account, and thus poor individuals and their children are construed as financial burdens to society.